Greetings, my friends. I am Dictor Van Doomcock, the future ruler of Earth, broadcasting from Section X Studios at the center of the Earth, and this is the Pop Culture Breakdown with Overlord DVD, a rundown of the top pop culture stories and rumors of the day. In this episode, we'll be discussing a couple of particularly revealing rumors I have received from someone purporting to be highly placed in the Disney organization about a recent Smackdown Kennedy allegedly received from the top of the Disney food chain, and an allegation that Disney has actually lost money on Star Wars. But first, let's talk about the latest disappointment from the incredibly disappointing cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation, LeVar Burton. Star Trek: The Next Generation has not aged well, not because the show itself isn't wonderful, but because the cast of the show has revealed themselves to be such horrific disappointments. It's very difficult to look around that bridge and not be disgusted every time I try to watch it now. Now, I'm a big advocate of separating the art from the artist. I do not support the idea that simply because an actor or filmmaker has some kind of scandal or obnoxious political stance in their closets, that I should boycott their films. And on the surface, my current inability to enjoy watching The Next Generation anymore might seem contradictory. But let's examine why this, at least to my mind, is a special case. Firstly, we've never had an actor willingly, even enthusiastically, participate in the disgracing and ruination of their original characters in the way that Patrick Stewart did with Jean-Luc Picard. While Mark Hamill did participate in the degradation and humiliation of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, he did so under widely disseminated protest, expressing in many interviews how he fundamentally disagreed with every decision Rian Johnson made, and was even shown to be weeping on the set at one point, so distraught was Hamill over his contractual obligation to destroy his own legacy character. But Patrick Stewart was an entirely different matter. Stewart actively collaborated with Kurtzman and Secret Hideout to transform Captain Picard into a pathetic, groveling apology monkey in an insultingly moronic plot seemingly extracted directly from Satan's rectum. Star Trek Picard turned Starfleet into a bunch of assholes, and Star Trek into a sad joke. And that alone is reason enough not to be able to watch The Next Generation anymore without being reminded of that doddering whipped cur of a man who used to be a hero. That alone is enough. But then we've got Kurtzman collaborator Jonathan Frakes, who actively participated in the cultural vandalization of Star Trek and Star Trek Discovery, knowing full well this garbage is in no way Star Trek, and yet lending his own name and credibility to STD and further empowering and enabling Kurtzman to trash and violate Star Trek in every way, all for a lousy paycheck and a directing gig. We do not like collaborators here in the center of the earth, but even worse than that is Marina Sirtis, who decided to kick the state of Texas when it was down, locked in a life-or-death winter storm emergency where most of the state was frozen in ice with no power for a week or more. Sirtis mocked the real-life suffering of Texans on Twitter, yammering on about how Texas votes and saying they deserve what they get. The lack of common decency and humanity in Marina Sirtis has forever tainted how I see her personally, and so you can see that everywhere I look now on the bridge of NCC 1701D, I see reminders of just how badly disappointing these people and characters later proved to be. And now we come to the latest disgrace in the franchise, LeVar Burton. In a recent appearance on The View, LeVar Burton shot his mouth off in support of cancel culture. That's right, folks. Our own Geordie LaForge has now taken a stance in support of cyberbullying and mob injustice. During a discussion where Burton supported the yanking of Dr. Seuss books on the basis that some simple cartoons might make the SJW snowflakes melt and get their little fifis hurt, Burton said, quote, "In terms of cancel culture, I think it's misnamed. That's a misnomer. I think we have a consequence culture, and that consequences are finally encompassing everybody in the society, whereas they haven't been ever in this country. I think that there are good signs that are happening in the culture right now, and I think it has everything to do with a new awareness on people who are simply unaware of the real nature of life in this country for people who have been othered since this nation began. Unquote. Othered. That's the term Burton used, othered. Appropriate, since the cancel culture he calls consequence culture is the ultimate tool of alienation for the far left. And it goes something like this. Someone gets publicly outed for something they did as a flawed human being, and we all have things like that in our lives. It could be something they said, something they didn't say, something they said that is being willfully misinterpreted or lied about or misquoted, some personal moral failing, anything at all that we, normal humans, used to call mistakes. To err is human, to forgive divine, and to cancel loathsome and anti-Christian. Christ himself said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." But these little Twitter twats love casting digital stones at anyone who has their human foibles exposed on social media. Cancel culture is the last refuge of the cowardly and the tyrannical. A bunch of nasty little ants trying to drag down lions by the sheer weight of their numbers. Cancel culture is nothing more than mob justice in cyberspace, dragging someone out of their homes and publicly lynching them for the unpardonable crime of being human and making mistakes. This is who LeVar Burton is, by his own words, and I am absolutely disgusted. I know that many of you do not feel as I do that you can, in your mind, separate out the Jean-Luc Picard of the next generation from the pathetic worm you saw in Kurtzman's Star Trek P-Hard, but I cannot. And at this point, I can't even look away from Picard on the Enterprise D bridge for solace, because everywhere I look now, I see nothing but disgrace and disappointment. And now, this. My friends, seldom have I ever heard a rumor as juicy as this one. Now, to be fair, this came directly to me from a source I cannot verify, a DM on Twitter from someone I had never heard from before. This was a brand new account, because the source did not want me knowing who they were. They went into some detail regarding their history of employment at Disney or Lucasfilm, and also some very specific details regarding their position, the logistics of their employment, and why they had access to this information. So please bear in mind, this is information provided to me from someone purporting to have inside knowledge of Disney and or Lucasfilm. And since I cannot independently and personally verify the information, I am reporting all of this as mere rumor, and I ask you to please regard it as such and to take it with a grain of salt. But even further, since this is a brand new source, and this could be active misinformation, take it with a lot of salt. But here's what I was told. The message began, quote, "Okay, so this is not my main Twitter as I cannot reveal who I really am," unquote. After an initial introduction and information regarding their employment at Disney or Lucasfilm, the source told me, quote, "I want you to know that the so-called leaks coming from Lucasfilm over the last week and a half were not only known about by Kathy, but she even had a hand in writing several of them," unquote. The source then gave me some very specific information to establish why they would know about these leaks, and for those of you who don't know what this source was talking about, during the week and a half of silence on Star Wars social media, a leak was posted on Reddit or some other board that really ran counter to years of reports and rumors saying there isn't any civil war at Lucasfilm, there's a 4-hour cut of Rise of Skywalker called the Abrams cut, and that Kathleen Kennedy really likes Jon Favreau and would be delighted to have him take over from her as president of Lucasfilm. This was laughable malarkey to most of us in the fandom menace that seemed to serve Kennedy's aims. And indeed, the source claims this post not only came from the Kennedy camp, parts of it came from Kennedy's desk itself. But now, for the juicy part, folks. This source claims that there are, quote, ever-growing problems in relation to communication between Disney and Lucasfilm executives, unquote, and then states, quote, Disney, it seems, has had it with Lucasfilm execs losing money from their cash cow that was supposed to be Star Wars. The franchise, instead of making money, has in fact had a net loss of almost $30 million, mostly due to Solo and Episode 9. The films may have made well over their production costs, but they lost enormous revenue when considering the advertisement campaigns, unsold toy lines developed and never used, promotional media, etc., etc. Unquote. So, very interesting information here. Now, we knew that Solo lost money, that much was clear. But the notion that Disney has not broken even with Star Wars yet? That is some very interesting news, if true. Could it be that all the production overages, firing directors, reshooting vast chunks of several movies due to incompetent writing and producing has taken such a financial toll, coupled with the resultant decline in interest in Star Wars across the board, has hurt box office and merchandising receipts that much? According to this source, that is the way. Having discussed Disney's disappointment with its return on investment on Star Wars, the source continued, quote, "Bob has pretty much had it with Kat, and things are coming to a hard boil. Kat was even given an ultimatum 2 weeks ago. This ultimatum from Bob was, quote, 'Get your shit together or prepare to find a new studio to fuck up,' unquote." The entire floor heard that conversation. You can take this as rumor or not, unquote. At this point, the source testifies they have personal knowledge that this occurred. I've tried to follow up with this source, but the person is difficult to get a hold of these days. I did get a reply about a week after my initial follow-up, and the source said, quote, "Thank you, Lord Doomcock. I cannot monitor this Twitter as much as I would like right now, as heads are starting to roll in the offices. Leaks are coming out left and right, and there is a witch hunt going on here. We all have to be very careful right now. I will give you more as I can. Thank you for your efforts to save pop culture," unquote. So as I mentioned, this is a news source and this could be some kind of hoax, so approach this with an extra level of caution. But at the very least, if this is revealed to be a hoax, it will later rest the idea that I make this shit up. When I report on these rumors, I am absolutely reporting on things that I have been sent from outside parties. I am entirely truthful and am only ever reporting really that someone provided me with this information and that I cannot verify it. That's what makes it a rumor, a scoop for all those people out there who are particularly dense around this issue. And now, this. And finally, in the good news department, none other than the illustrious Gina Carano has confirmed that her completed appearance on Running Wild with Bear Grylls will air after all. Cancel culture scumbags, the kind supported by LeVar Burton, did their best to cancel Gina Carano, to drive her out of show business, humiliate her, force her to take a knee and apologize for exercising her freedom of speech. But alas, fairness and common decency has once more defeated the whining of these woke wankers, and Gina's Run with Bear Grylls will air on Nat Geo on May 10th. Look for calls to cancel Nat Geo in the near future, as dissent will not be tolerated in this lame new world the triggered and toxic troglodytes are trying to build. But for now, this is wonderful news for Gina Carano fans around the world, and I count myself among them. And that concludes this episode of Pop Culture Breakdown with Overlord DVD. From Section X Studios at the center of the earth, I am Overlord Dictor Van Doomcock, hence Overlord DVD, bidding you all, my friends, stay angry. Ha 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 ha